One and a two and a...
And just like that, we're into a brand new live stream right here on the Long Box Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I'm the Punk, and I am joined by not just one, but two stellar creatives. I've got John Lees over here next to me. I got Sally Cantirino below, and we are going to be talking all things about their new series that's coming from Mad Cave Studios called Orla. Tomorrow, as of the date of this recording, which is July 13th. So Monday, July 14th is the final order cutoff for Orla. Let your local comic shops know that you want it so that they can order it so that you are guaranteed to get your copy. I was able to read a graciously shared, that's hard to say in a row, preview. Graciously shared. It's too much shushing happening. It's a super fun book. Like it did not go the direction I thought it was, but it definitely went where I was hoping it would go. I'm going to let you lead all of the content. I don't want to give anything that you don't want spoiled away. Just know if you don't have Orla on your radar, it should be. It's going to be great. So thank you both for joining on a Sunday afternoon / evening for you, John.
Yes, 8 p.m.
As a comic podcast, we got to start with your origin story. Like, how did I'll let you decide who goes first. How did you get into comics, and like how did making comics start, and then how did we end up here in the middle of 2025?
Ladies first.
I'm gonna let John start because I haven't heard his whole origin story.
Oh,
it began with a spaceship that came from the dying planet of Krypton.
and then your parents were killed in Crime Alley.
Yeah.
Your dog saved your life. Got it.
Then I was bit by a radioactive anxious person. So for me, I've like always loved comics and comic book related things. Like I think one of some of my earliest memories is like watching like the 1989 Batman when I was like 4 years old and probably like far too young to be watching it. And like, you know, and all that is like the animated series, etc. And then like obviously was a big comic geek in the 90s as a kid, and then I got back into it in like the mid 2000s. And then funny enough, what started me actually like making comics, because although I was a comic fan for years and I was like a writer for years and I had ambitions of doing writing, originally I was wanting to do screenwriting. Like I studied screenwriting at university, but I had a budget for a short film that had fallen through and stuff, and I was kind of at a loose end. And this would be about maybe 2008, 2009. And a friend of mine, Jamie, had said, who like we went to the comic shop together, and he was like my comic friend. It said like they were an artist, and they were like, "Oh, you know what? Would you like to write a comic for me to draw?" So I thought I looked into the process of writing a comic, and I was quite fascinated by the whole like, you know, process behind it, because like scripting a comic is all about limitations almost. You've only got so much real estate to work in, you've only got so many panels per page, so many like, you know, pages per book. And I like the kind of like framework of that and the limitations and have to be inventive around it. I found it a fascinating process, and like that comic that I was going to do with my friend like never ended up happening, but through like the process of experiment with writing, I ended up writing like a comic called The Standard, which was a kind of deconstructionist superhero comic that I'd written. And it ended up being, which is weird, like was the first ever comic script I wrote was like issue 1 of that, and which ended up being like my first comic, which is like I wouldn't recommend, but so like I ended up getting that made through. It was like I'd submitted it to some thing called The Proving Ground. It was like an online column. It was ran by an editor called Stephen Forbes. And like, you know, they generally it was kind of like a brutal like Simon Cowell style evisceration. Like, you know, when they'd send people to submit their scripts and they'd tell them about how the ways it was terrible. So I kind of like, you know, quite anxiously submitted that to it, and then he got back and he actually liked it, and he'd said, like, this is one of the first scripts I actually read to the end, past the segment that I was editing, because I wanted to see what happened next. And he got in touch with me separate and said, like, I think this is worth actually getting made. So we worked on, he became an editor, and we ended up producing this like 6-issue series. It took us like 4 years to complete. And again, if you're starting comics, I probably would not recommend like a 6-issue mini series being like what to do. But like, but it taught me a lot about making comics. I think like by the time I got to the end of that 6 issues, I thought I kind of know a little bit about making comics now. And then from there, I kind of pivoted into doing like horror more. Like I did a book called And Then Emily Was Gone, which was my first kind of like breakout book that came out around 2014. Did that with a Scottish artist called Ian Laurie. And then from there, I've just kind of like been, the rest is history. I've been working mostly in the horror field, but more recently, doing kind of like some genre mashups and doing different things. So probably the things I'm best known for are And Then Emily Was Gone, a book called Hotel, which came out through AW Studios. It's like a horror anthology that's been optioned for film. And Sync, which is a book through Comics Tribe that I do with Alex Cormack and Letter Sean Lee, which is a kind of pulp crime, hard-boiled crime horror saga set in a fictionalized, version of Glasgow. And yeah, then more recently I did The Nasty, which is where me and Sally first started working together, because Sally was on covers for that, or variant covers. And The Nasty, kind of a coming-of-age horror comedy set in 1990s Scotland against the backdrop of the video Nasty's Moral Panic. And that brings us up to Orla. So that's my kind of brief, truncated comics history.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sally?
So, yeah, I'll start like my comics history. I think it's relevant to Orla and some of the styles that I've chosen to use in Orla is, my first foray into comics was like mixzine in the 90s, which was like Sailor Moon, Magic Knight, Ray Earth, Parasite, and then like a noir comic that I cannot remember the name of, that was put out, maybe Tokyo Pop in like the mid 90s. Okay. So it was like, that was sort of my first foray into reading comics, was reading that manga. Then later on, I was reading a lot more like DC and Vertigo stuff through the public library, had a pretty healthy comic section in the YA part of the library. So I was reading a lot of Grant Morrison, a lot of Doom Patrol and The Invisibles and Animal Man and Kelly Jones Dead Man series, Preacher, different graphic novels, any sort of graphic novels that were coming out in the 2000s, if they were coming through the library, so I was reading them. And also the library had the coffee table book of Love and Rockets, the Locus Volume 1. And I was just taking that out of the library over and over again. That was my first intro to indie comics.
Nice.
Yeah. So, once I was like in my teens and 20s, I started making my own like mini comics, zines, self-publishing, submitting to anthologies. I did a couple of things that were like funded on Kickstarter. I did a comic with Jordan Osaka that I'm still very proud of called We Have to Go Back. We funded that through Kickstarter. And then, I did a little work with Black Mask. I did The Final Girls with Comixology. I did a couple series of The Vault, all in the horror genre. My last project was Archaic with Melissa F. Olson over at Ahoy, and now I'm on Orla.
Nice.
So that's it. It's quite a bit. I've done a lot in like 5 years.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, it's definitely like testament to once you start making comics and getting them and like seeing them out in the world, that adrenaline rush is like better than any amount of coffee or energy drink or candy bar or whatever could possibly give you.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. Like just diving in head first. Is this
like
for?
I
Is,
always
go ahead.
enjoyed doing art. Like I always enjoyed drawing, and then comics was sort of the perfect intersection of being able to do the storytelling that I wanted to do that I couldn't achieve in like a single illustration. So it was kind of like, it felt like such a happy medium for me and such like a natural spot to like make art.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely super unique. And as I try and explain, because I'm one of like one comic people in my family, which is shocking. Like, I don't know how I'm the one that ended up as deep in the throes as I did, but trying to explain it to, you know, like my mother-in-law and my cousins and stuff like that. They're like, so you're like making comics? Cool. And I'm like, yeah, it's like at this point it's more difficult for me to try and explain it to you with you as like, you know, a medical trained person or like a, you know, office manager or something. Like it's way more difficult for me to explain this to you than if you like my cousin who does a lot of music. He was the easiest because it's also creative. And so he was like, yeah, storytelling. Like, again, it's just a different, I couldn't do that, but it's a different way. And that kind of leans into, John, what you mentioned with like the limitations of comic scripting. Because I had always been writing stuff, like I've always had ideas or I write down weird dreams that I've had. But to turn that into a comic script was actually way more challenging than I ever anticipated, even with the advice that I was given of like start small, start with like 4-page, 6-page, 8-page, maybe 10, at like start there. And so I was like, oh, how hard could that, like, I have these huge, massive story ideas that, you know, could easily fit, you know, a full floppy or a one shot. Like, how hard can 4 pages be? And then I tried to write it and I was like, oh, I have an 11-page script. Crap.
Like I think the shorter a comic is, the harder it is to do it well. Like I mean, I still suck. Like there's something people ask me to do, like a 1-pager or like a 5-pager for an anthology. But like a lot of times I turn it down because I just can't do it well. Like I'm long-winded by nature. Yeah, it's like a art form in itself. That I think like idea of like sort of like honing something right down to kind of like the core of what it is, like, you know, and cutting out all like the extraneous stuff. It's a challenge.
Yeah. Sally, did you feel, have you ever felt similarly, or for you, is it just more of like a natural like thing to make shorter comics?
I think when I started making my own comics, I was aiming for like 6 to 8 pages. Like, one, because I was photocopying them myself at like Kinko's, you know.
Yeah.
I was not I was like paying per page and I was doing them black and white. I was doing everything myself. I also, you know, was very lucky to have people who worked in comics, you know, be teachers and mentors to me, who warned me to like, do not try to do the 800-page manga epic as your first thing. Start with like 4-page autobio. You know, work your way up.
And like,
and I've always preferred,
are like littered with like, you know, the graves of like, you know, Untold issue 1 of like a 20-part saga that they never gets an issue 2.
Yeah. Like when I was I used to when I was a teenager, I did the pre-college and the continuing education programs at School of Visual Arts, and became friends with some teachers there, and they brought me back as like a teacher's assistant for their summer program with teenagers. And yeah, like watching teenagers want to do like, you know, well, I'm going to do 20 pages and it's going to be the prologue to my 10,000 page, like, and it's like, no, man, you got like a week to do this. You're going to have like 4 pages in an anthology. Like, like dream big, but you got to start.
It's good to have aspirations, but rein it in.
Yeah.
And that's the thing as well. I think like when you're early in your career or when you're young, like, you know, I think that your brain is evolving and growing at such a rate that, like, you know, if you try and start with something massive, you'll be bored of it and have thought of the next thing by the time, like, you've got, like, you know, deep into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I
Yeah.
committed to anything I started to think of when I was like, 18 or 20, like I would be like, what? No. This is so far from who I am as a person now. Like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you would probably like just now be finishing it and
Yeah.
like, this is not where I started. Why is this life? I love that both of you have like the horror and the darker side of storytelling as part of your origins. Like, is it something that like, where do you think that comes from for either of you? That's
For me, I mean, I literally wrote a book about it. You know, like, because the Nasty's very much about, like, you know, like the love of horror and things like that. But for me, it's like I kind of associate like horror with like wholesome feels and kind of like my comfort zone place essentially, because like I remember like some of my like earliest memories are like of happy childhood, like, you know, happy childhood like weekends spent, you know, like at home or with like my round at my cousins or whatever, like, you know, merrily watching Nightmare on Elm Street 4, you know, like, you know, or Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, you know, or Maniac Cop, Badge of Silence, or the Monsters. Like, you know, and like, so for me, like that idea of like, you know, gore and horror and things, I just like associate that with kind of like warm, cozy feelings. And even now, like literally, like my like evening cool down routine is usually like doing some yoga while a slasher movie's playing in the background. Like it's just like for me, like, so I kind of like, you know, I've always like the idea of like horror's always appealed to me, and like as I've got older, like, you know, more sophisticated, and it makes me feel nice. I always feel like horror's such a great genre because it's such a versatile genre. I think in a lot of ways it's the most truthful genre. Where you can talk about like real things through a prism of like, you know, a genre lens. Like, so the things we're anxious about, the things we care about, or the things like, you know, that are on our minds, but escalated to kind of like a grand scale with horror. I think it's an interesting, like, you know, realm to be in, because it's like horror, much like comedy, like is like existing at like an emotional high level. So I think, like, you know, encourages like big, you know, ideas, big swings, and yeah, I just think it's a fun playground to exist in. And also, like, who doesn't like an exploding head or a popping eyeball to spice up the story? The only thing that would make Rage and Prejudice even better would be if like someone was getting a spinal cord ripped out or something at some point.
Yeah, like it's funny because probably the first horror movies that I was watching were like watching Mystery Science Theater on Comedy Central or Sci-Fi Channel as a kid, and like watching them riff on, you know, Roger Corman horror movies, which kind of informed both my taste in like, you know, maybe a little bit more of like lo-fi, low budget, cheesier horror.
yeah.
And also, you know, back to Orla, that sort of 60s, 70s aesthetic. Those like 60s and 70s romance comics were a big influence on some of the choices I made when drawing Orla. And then, yeah, like just the intersection of horror and humor, and like how when you're in a stressful situation or you're kind of recounting something that's like, oh, this was terrible, and you're like laughing about it, you know, because that's just a release valve for those feelings of like, oh, everything was okay at the end, so I can just kind of laugh about it. You know, or when you're like a teenager, like I was, and you're like, we're gonna go see House of Wax because we want to laugh at Paris Hilton getting killed, and then being like, oh, oh god, there's like fingers being cut off. You know?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you go in thinking like you're gonna laugh at something like, oh, this can't be that scary, especially when you're going back and watching older horror movies. You know, you're not necessarily like going back to watch like Saw. You're going back to watch like Nightmare on Elm Street, and you're like, oh, this is probably going to be kind of ridiculous, and you're like,
Yeah.
There's a fountain of blood.
Yeah, and I do. Freddy has always been my favorite, like 80s slasher franchise, because for me, like the intersection of horror and just ridiculous comedy, to me that whole franchise for the most part has like an incredible balance between the two, and so it's like you're terrified and also you're entertained because like specifically how in the world would a slasher with the like 10-foot long arms at the end of the alleyway, like I look at it and I'm not scared at all because I'm like, that's so ridiculous, it's funny.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
it's
yet,
probably the
if
same
you were
reason.
out walking around and you saw something with 10-foot arms,
Yeah, you would be terrified.
I
down
agree, yeah.
down like the alleyway, you'd be like,
Yeah,
you know. I mean, and the opposite end of the spectrum, one of my favorite franchises is the Chucky franchise, and it's like,
Okay.
how scary can a 3-foot tall be? You're like, how yes.
I was about
Like,
to say
how
my
scary.
favorite as well.
That yeah, like, oh, that doll's like 2.5 feet tall. Like I could run away from it. And then, you know, when I started dating the man who's now my husband, and I met his goddaughter, and it's like, oh, they're small children are freakishly powerful. Okay. Okay. Now
Got
I
it.
understand
Yeah,
how hard it is to run away from something that's like 2 feet tall.
That's fantastic. So like there's no easy transition from that. Tell me about Orla. Where did this story come from? Like at what point did you have the script is like far along enough and know that you wanted to work with Sally? Like we'll start with John and then Sally will bring you in as he brought you in on the process.
Well, first off, like for anyone who's not aware, I feel like I'm starting to get better at this through repetition, but Orla is a rom-com creature feature mashup about Orla Bard, who's this woman navigating the single scene in Seattle while dealing with loneliness, anxiety, and the fact she sometimes turns into a man-eating monster. And she can't rid herself of this affliction, which she calls herself the Ick. That's what she calls this monstrous alter ego. And because she can't get rid of this curse, she says she's going to help womankind by like removing the scummiest men from the dating pool permanently. And things kind of escalate from there as she tries to figure out how to balance this when things start going out of her control. But yeah, for Orla, like the initial impetus was me wanting to do like a rom-com or a romance comic. Because like I like rom-coms, and I had a bunch of ideas I've been developing around and playing with, and then like because it's me, I ended up going back to the horror aspect of it, and like the Ick is essentially like it starts from that rom-com place of like what's the obstacle like that's preventing like these two people from getting together, like, and then I thought, well, what about some monster that kills people, and I kind of like so I drew from a bunch of like various like inspirations and influences, various films that went into kind of like soup. Like I mentioned, Muriel's Wedding before has been like a massive one for me because like I love that idea of a kind of messy protagonist who like maybe does bad things or things that make you angry, but you never don't love her or you never bring yourself to hate her. I wanted that kind of like dynamic for our lead character, which is like, you know, where Orla Bard came from. And yeah, like, so I'd pitched this to Mad Cave, and it was quite funny because normally whenever like I'm pitching anything or developing anything, it's like a agonizing years-long process of trying to haul over the line and like, you know, but literally this was like Mad Cave going, do you have any ideas? And then, oh, I've just developed this one, what do you think? And I'm going, yes, let's do it. I was like, what was going on here? So that was quite, you know, like jarring. And then so at the time they'd said like, do you have like any preferences of who you'd want to be the artist on it? And I put together like a very short list, and at the top of that list was Sally, who I've wanted to work with for ages. And I've already told Adam this story, like, you know, so it's not like, you know, like, telling out of school or anything. But before I even knew Adam Cahoon or who he was, back like when we were first doing the Nasty for Vault Comics, and Adrian Wasso, like the editor-in-chief at Vault, was like, you know, if you could choose any artist to work with on this book, who would it be? And I was like, Sally Cantirino. And he's like, unfortunately, Sally's doing like, you know, another book for Vault right now, which ended up being like Human Remains. I think that was why I got like Sally on board to do the variant covers. So I've like had an idea of wanting to work with Sally for a long time. So I was glad we were finally able to like, you know, do it for Orla. And it's funny because like I kind of went from like me writing thinking Sally would be quite a good fit for this to get to the point where like Sally was so in my head of like this would be the perfect choice of artist. This, but I was actually like writing it, imagining drawing in Sally's style. So I was really relieved when like like Sally was up for it and said that she wanted to do it, which was an all pass over to Sally.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because when I was doing the covers for the Nasty, like obviously like Adam's art is fantastic. Like all the art on the interior is fantastic. Like I don't think I could have done a better job. But I would get the comics to read so I could do the variant covers and I would be like, this is so good. Like I wish I got to draw this. Like I love this story. I love this concept. So when you reached out to me about drawing Orla, I was like, first of all, I already feel very emotionally attached to Orla. Thank you. I already would I'm already like, I would die for her. I support women's wrongs. I would die for her. And yeah, I was just like really excited that our schedules lined up. I was able to be on this book. It's been such a joy to draw. It's just been so fun.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I just
getting to work
to
with
see your work
Lisa
coming in
has
as
been
well. Like I think you've been doing so much cool stuff with it. Like, I was already like, excited about the book based on the scripts, but like that excitement's like at a lower level and I've seen the pages coming like, oh, this book's gonna be something like really special.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, what's the do you have a long-term plan for Orla?
Right now we're just wanting to do the best 5-issue miniseries we can do. Like obviously, like it would be great if it's like a massive monumental book that outsells Batman, and they come back and say we want to do a sequel and a tie-in movie and a toy line. But right now, we're focusing on like the series as it is. Like I think I'm really happy with the way the story's going.
That's cool. So with what's it? Usually the folks that I have on, and I know you've done plenty of like self-publishing type stuff or going through the Comics Tribe with Sync and that, but like with your experience working with Vault and a Mad Cave as well, like what is it like as the creator to go like the self-publishing type routes versus like pitching it and having it picked up at the publisher and then like running it through the publisher? Like how do the two compare, or do they?
It's difficult. Like obviously, like, every experience is different, but like I think pitching is just such like laborious, soul crushing process. Like I've always said that writing a comic or drawing a comic or making a comic in any fashion is like having a baby. It's you're putting part of yourself into this new thing, like your hopes are invested in it, you love it, you cherish it, you want to protect it. Pitching a comic is like taking that baby and putting it in a hamster ball and rolling it across the motorway and hoping it gets to the other side intact. It's like you're suddenly faced up with these people who don't love this idea the way that you love it, or don't see it the way that you see it, and well, this wouldn't sell, or I don't I'm not sure about this, or it's not the kind of thing we're looking for right now. And so that can be that's a whole soul crushing process in itself. But then let's say you get through all that, and you find the publisher that's the right fit, and they're like, yes, we want to do this book, and it's moving forward. I think generally speaking, my experience with publishers has been positive, beyond the ones that where the book has never surfaced for, and I can't talk about them for legal reasons. But very shocking. But I would say that generally speaking, my experience with publishers has been good, but obviously it's an adjustment where, let's say if I'm doing Sync, and I go, I think I could do with the usual issue ends 24 pages, but I think I could do with a couple of extra pages. I'm just going to give myself 26 pages for this book, and the only person that suffers is me because I've got to pay the artist for another couple of pages. But obviously then you have a publisher who no, it's 20 pages per issue, it's 22 pages per issue. So you have to really be kind of disciplined and keeping things too brief. And so that's obviously something to deal with. And then there's obviously the fact that the other side of things is having all those resources behind you. Like for me, I'm still kind of shell shocked when like for example, Comics Tribe are great, but like everything is Tyler. Like, you know, like it's you know, like Tyler James, who's the editor-in-chief of Comics Tribe, who's a machine. But like, you know, like so much of the company is like 3 Tylers in a trench coat, like, you know, to make a bigger Tyler, like, you know, like, you know, like he's just like a pure like jack of all trades. But like, so I'm still kind of taken aback when, let's see, with me and Sally, when we did like the marketing call for Orla, and then he produced this kind of like, you know,
There's
like
so many people here.
like a Brady Bunch style, like wall of faces, like all these people whose job it is to make your book great and be a success. And it's like, you know, it's kind of almost daunting. Like, my God, where did I start? And there's so many people that are actually, you know, like involved in this. So it's quite, and you know, like good to know you've got that kind of like support structure behind you.
That's awesome. Now, Sally, like on the flip side, having books on Comixology, because I've never worked in that realm either. Like, what's that experience like? Like, is it, because that's just digital, right? So is it like, here's my file, and then they post it, and you're like,
so
cool. Like, how's that work?
So the deal with doing the Comixology original is I was working with Katie West through her Fiction and Feelings publishing, like umbrella. So they technically were like, hey, we're gonna like give you, this is your budget, make your team, we get rights to it for a couple of years, you know. I think initially Image was supposed to put out the print copy, and then it was Dark Horse. That whole situation was also very interesting because I started working on Final Girls like the very beginning of 2020. So it was very weird to be like, well, I'm drawing this for digital, so nothing's slowed down for me. Nothing's stopped me. No, like there were, you know, we're not dependent on a distributor or paper being able to be imported from another country and not turned into toilet paper. Like, you know, it was a very strange situation to be working on something going straight to digital, because I was seeing so many people in the industry around me being affected by the world shutting down and conventions grinding to a halt and distribution and import and export grinding to a halt. And I was just kind of there like, I guess I'm still drawing.
I mean, that actually brings up an interesting point, Sally, which is like, obviously, like the pandemic and lockdown was terrible in like loads of ways, and like really all those important ways it was awful. But I think in like some like really limited ways, like in the comics industry, I think it actually was like good in some ways, or at least like, you know, had its advantages where, for example, for me, I think I ever got as many things like, you know, greenlit as I did like during the pandemic, because like the convention scene was removed, and the fact that I'm like in Scotland didn't really matter anymore. So like everyone's having like FaceTime calls, you know, or like you say, it's like if you're doing something digital in your case, like, you know, suddenly like it's like at the forefront and everything else has stopped running, and you're able to kind of keep on producing stuff. So it's interesting how like, you know, opportunities can arise out of even like really unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah, it's like I'm already working from home. My day doesn't change.
Yeah.
You know? My routine kind of didn't change. I just can't go like walk to the coffee shop if I get bored. I have to actually stay home and work. I can't be like, oh, I'm gonna go get like a coffee and, you know, wander.
Yeah. I didn't work from home until the shutdown, and then now I'm still at home, and I'm like, how did I ever work in an office? Like, this is the worst. And when I'm at home, I can hang out with my dog all day, and if I, you know, need to take a break, I just lock my computer and I'll walk my neighborhood and come back, and I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll go back to work now. Like, how did I ever do this?
It's like I can take lunch whenever I want.
Yeah. And if I happen to eat my lunch at 9:30 in the morning, I can go back at 2:00 in the afternoon and get a snack. Like, it's perfect. All of the benefits. So like,
you don't have to share a bathroom with anyone except your family.
Oh, yes. That part specifically. Yeah. I get to choose what coffee I brew. It's not whatever they have in the break room that was the cheapest thing at Costco. It's awesome.
If you
It's
don't want to
really-
wear pants, you don't have to wear pants.
I'm saying, I mean, you're not seeing anything from a shirt down, so you don't know.
Yeah.
But like, so speaking of like working on comics and working from home and doing that stuff, like what do you do when you're not actively like making the book? So after you finish Orla and you get the pages sent off and all that stuff, like, is it just like on to the next project, or like how do you balance multiple projects at the same time where it may or may not be art or writing every single day, day in and day out?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Yeah.
So I, before I got married, when I was single, I would be balancing like multiple projects where I was doing interiors. So I would be doing like, I would work on one comic during the day, eat dinner, work on something else in the evening. Now that I have boundaries and have a wonderful person in my life that I want to spend my time with, I'm much more like, I've gotten better about like one, focusing and getting everything done during business hours to the best of my ability. And not, spending a whole lot of time scrolling instead of drawing. It's definitely a lot of like you get motivated to like finish things at a reasonable hour, especially as you get older and you don't want to be up working till like 2 a.m. I will still sometimes split my day up where like if I'm working on illustration projects or I'm working on like I will do illustrations for RPGs, for tabletop games. Kind of split up my day like, all right, I'm going to work on this until noon. And then from like noon to 6, I work on, comics and then call it a day.
I mean, that's the dream. Like that's,
yeah,
you're describing everything that would be amazing.
I know I'm extremely lucky that like, I have the situation that I'm in where I can, be able to split my day like this and like have a workspace, have an office to work in. Like I'm extremely lucky. I know that. But yeah, like I used to try to balance a million things and try to do as many projects as possible. And I just don't have I'm Parker Posey in White Lotus. I just can't live like that. Just not meant to live in a comfortable life. I want to work on like one project at a time and like focus my energy and like always have a little bit of stuff in the background that I'm thinking about. Like I'm, kind of always low key collaborating with my husband on like the tabletop games that he writes. Like I'm always interjecting ideas into like his thing, or like he's asking me to draw stuff. Variant covers, whatever. Thinking about future pitches, future projects I want to do. But I like to be able to just work on the interiors of like one comic at a time is really nice.
That's awesome.
I mean, for me, I like to be as productive as possible because me, like, I generally divide my time between like writing comics, doing the things like that are peripheral to writing comics, like doing your promo and doing like your pitches or doing all that stuff, sending emails. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm like staring off into the middle distance, worrying about what I've done with my life. So I have to be like, hey, don't let the existential dread in. Don't let it in. So yeah, like so I like to be productive as much as I can. I like to have ideally I like to have multiple things on the go, like whether it be like so I like to write far ahead, like so I'll make, for example, like Sync Volume 3, cheap plug, just came out recently. And yeah, so like I've already written the entirety of Volume 4, and like I've already started on Volume 5, so I like to write ahead, well ahead. I think like it stresses out like Alex, who like doesn't like to read ahead. So like I know like he likes to just like discover the book as he's drawing it. So like yeah, it's like sometimes I'll forgotten stuff I've written by the time he reads it. But like so then I'll also be like writing like I like my ideal schedule is, generally speaking, takes me about 2 weeks to write a script. Like the first week is like I write a plan for it, and then like the first half of the issue, then the second week is like the second half of the issue. Then like maybe I have writing groups that I take part in. Like I have one online and one in person here in Scotland, and like they'll give me like edits and notes, and then I'll go back and do a redraft over a week. And like so I like to kind of like have that on the go with like multiple different projects overlapping at once. And my ideal thing is having, let's say, like Orla and then Sync or like something else, like that I can back and forth on. So it feels like I'm always kind of keeping fresh and limber, and also throw in like also like pitches and developing new concepts and new ideas. And then just like doing all the stuff that's like the things that are for currently active projects, like doing promo for that, doing social media stuff for all that. But like Sally said, like I was always used to be, when I was younger, I was used to be someone who I would write until like the wee hours of the morning, until I was like falling asleep, and then I'm like, okay, that's me. I'm just going to go and I finish writing, I'll go to my bed. And I think that's a really kind of toxic way to work in a lot of ways, because like you can work and work and work until you can't work anymore, and you'll still go to bed feeling like you've not done enough, but you're angry you didn't get more done anyway. So I always like to now, if I'm working during the week, like I like to be able to like close my computer and like end the day by like watching a movie or like watching an episode of TV or something, so I can say I've stepped away from the writing and I've done something else with my night. So that and obviously there's times when like I see friends and go out the house and have a social life. Like I don't, not too often, don't tell my editors. But like, but yeah, so I do like, so I do like to have that kind of like, thing where I don't like to end my day by like doing work. I like to like end my day by doing something else, like unwinding and relaxing and having some like slasher yoga. They're just to like, like make sure there's like a bit of a kind of remove and that it's not all work.
I am fully gonna start doing slasher yoga, just so you know. So, because I like, that's fantastic. That's such a fun idea. I love the intentionality of balancing projects and making sure you're unwinding from projects. Because as someone who like I will be up until 1-2 in the morning just because I'm awake, and as I'm awake, I'm like, well, I might as well be doing something productive if I'm not tired at all. So that's usually when I work on comic stuff. And there is something to be said about like, you get so tired working on the thing when you should be in bed. And then finally, when you quit and go to bed, you then are like, well, that was stupid. Why did I just do that? Like, why can't I be intentional about making time and putting my phone down and, working on this stuff during the day when I have downtime or on lunch break or whatever, instead of waiting until 1 a.m. to decide that I've suddenly got the creative inspiration to write something. So I love the unwinding.
It's a little bit like working out, where it's like, when you're working, when you're like, lifting weights or whatever, you're creating little tears in your muscle. If you don't let them rest, they're not going to heal and get stronger. So it's like, if you don't rest between when you're working on things, your brain just doesn't have the chance to like absorb what you've done, come back to things with fresh eyes, make better decisions on the next project you do. Like, like getting older, like I'm getting older, I'm like mid-30s, but what as you kind of the front of your brain finishes forming and you realize you're not invincible, you do need to rest. And that, especially for drawing, like your physical body is the machine. Your physical body is part of your drawing process, even if you're drawing digitally on like using a Wacom or an iPad, or I do a mix of both that and still inking traditionally. Like, what you eat, how you slept, how much you've rested, how much you've stretched. It all affects how your day is going to go and how your physical like workflow is going to go, you know? So it's like learning to take care of the rest of you, whether that's, you know, mental and emotional health through like therapy or unwinding to horror movies. Both valid. Both equally valid.
No, but I get that though in terms of like putting fuel back in. It's all part of the process. I mean, I know like during the day, I mean, there's certain times when it's like I like to go like swimming. I usually like go swimming like 2 or 3 times a week. And there's times when I'm like, oh, I'm really like under the gun for like you know, writing and stuff. I should probably just skip going to the pool and just keep on working. And sometimes I do that. Sometimes I do skip it and keep on working. But I have to say, there's never been a time that I've chosen to go work out and go swim that afterwards I thought I wish I didn't do that. Because like, you know, every time I think like, you know, just taking some time away, like to like, you know, work out, get the endorphins flowing, then makes you more productive when you come back because you feel like you've energized yourself and you've kind of like done something different. So I definitely think there's something to be said about like taking that time to recharge and do something that's not working on your project.
Yeah. Man, this is good stuff. See, I didn't ever expect us to be getting into this topic, but I'm so glad that we're here because I need to hear all of it. Because I've never been good at setting healthy boundaries for myself. I set them for other people, but like when it comes to me, I'm like, yeah, I can be tired tomorrow. Like I'll just keep plowing through. Or
I sleep when I'm dead. Yeah,
yeah, like the dumbest.
It's like no, I think I want to sleep now.
Yeah,
you do get these toxic thought cycles where it's like I know, like, and I think it ultimately comes down to like, you know, I'm stuck or like I don't know what I'm going to do in a script or like I've been, you know, whatever. But you get in these things where either you try and leave it and you go and go do something else and go out for the day or sit out and read or relax, and you can't enjoy that because you're sitting thinking like, oh, I should be working. And then if you don't do that and you try and sit and work instead and you still don't get something done, you're thinking I could have gone out, I could have done something, but instead I did this, I didn't even get anything out of it. So it becomes this kind of like vicious circle.
Yeah. It's like I'm for sure very good at giving myself a hard time about stuff like that. So like how do you overcome those negative thoughts when they happen?
Well,
many years of therapy. No, like I go to therapy. I work with my therapist about, it's like, I'm not kidding. Like a lot of what I have to work on in therapy is how do I talk to myself? You know, how do I react to situations? Do I default to like, oh no, I'm the worst? Or do I just say, okay, how am I gonna proceed? You know, like when you stop using a lot of energy on like beating yourself up, you suddenly have a lot of energy to like accomplish things. It's weird like that. So
I don't go to therapy, so I use like the classic model of like deciding that like, you know, it's my fault because I'm a uniquely terrible person, you know. So and then you
put on a slasher movie,
and then murder yoga. Yeah,
murder yoga.
Very natural responses to stress and trauma. That's of course. So with the creation of Orla, like how did that collaboration happen? Was it, John, did you already have script pages completed because you write so far in the future and then you sent it to Sally and then developed the pages from there? Or like, was there more collaboration in the creation of it?
Well, the way it worked out was I think I'd written like a couple of the scripts, or at least some of the scripts, when like Mad Cave brought Sally on. And then, like, I think Sally was finishing Archaic at the time, so I kind of went on and wrote ahead and wrote, like, the rest of the book once we knew Sally was involved. And then, like, I was really impressed. Because, like I say, I'm used to working with people who go, like, I don't like to read ahead. And then, like, you know, Sally was like, after like, a day, she's like, oh, I read all 5 of these scripts, you know, like, you know, and I was like, what? You read
well, all 5 of the scripts were, like, in the Google Drive. And I was like, yeah. You know, and,
there.
like, yeah. And, you know, I'll still... once I get to that script, I'll be like, oh my God, I totally forgot that this was going to be. But sometimes, you know, I like to know it's coming so that I think all of those, like, it helps me know what I need to keep in mind for world building and character design. If I have kind of a general scope of like, okay, this character is going to come back, so I got to remember how to draw them, or like, oh, this setting is going to keep coming up, so I should like build up my, my file folder of screenshots of Google Earth.
Yeah. That's it. Do you use Google Earth as references a lot?
I do. It's great. I love being able to like fly around and get the sense of an area, especially with like Seattle, where I'm not familiar with. But John Lee's is so wonderful that he gives me like exact locations that he wants. So it helps me figure out like, okay, they're walking from here to here, so I can kind of plot a route. Or they're going to be at, Pike Place. So it's going to look like this. It's going to be this specific landmark. Or like they're outside a theater. I'm like, okay, I can find a theater in Seattle and figure it out from there, and even if it's just to kind of help ground it in reality. Like awesome. Specificity kind of makes things feel real. So the more that I can say like, okay, I want to look at like this specific corner and this specific architecture in a place, it's going to make it feel more like a world that these characters are in, as opposed to like generic American city that is filmed in Canada,
That's just existing in a void. I think and that's something you do really well, like where one, like you have these landmarks that are like authentic, that are in Seattle, that if someone's from Seattle, they go, I recognize that. But even if they don't, like, there's so many little details that make it just feel like a real lived-in place. And, like, that's not just, like, the landmarks. It's all the little, like, sight gags and, like, the little, like, fake shops, like, brutality, like, in the deep shop, or the little signs, like, in, like, the bookshop, like, that the Gwyn has behind the desk. And, like, all those little
teach birds to read.
Yeah, like so it makes like play things feel more real, and it feels like in an actual like real world that this is inhabiting. I think like it just lets people lets the reader live in it for a bit when they're reading it.
Yeah. As a reader, I live for those background details. Like I'm the nerd that I'll read a book and then I'll go back and read it again, but I'll pay more attention to every like background and details and things that are happening, not as the main characters, just because I know a ton of artists like to either hide like Easter eggs in the background or just tell like funny little background stories that have nothing to do with the main plot. But like, as the panels progress, there's something happening in the background that if you don't pay attention, you miss it completely. But if you do, you're suddenly like, these are other actual like real characters. They're not just like the generic like cardboard cutout background people. So I love when attention is given, especially, and I love that you use the word specificity, because I use it and people always look at me like I have three heads, and I'm like, what? It matters. It's a real thing. The
New York
what?
Wait till you see our cover for issue 3. There's a lot of funny Easter eggs on the bookshelf.
Perfect.
Oh, yeah, I'm so pleased with it. So much fun had coming up with like dirty book titles on a paper, like on a cover.
That's awesome. So John, do you usually include like visual references when you've got specific things in mind for the artist, or are there sometimes when you're writing a script where you're like, I'm gonna leave that up to the artist because I just know I want it set in like a jazz piano bar? Which one is up to you, but like that's the setting I want?
I think it's a bit of both. Like sometimes it's good to just go like go wild, do what you want, but also like if I have a specific idea, my general thing is like I don't want to like be a dictator saying you must do this, you do that, because then you're kind of like impeding on like the artist's creativity. But I like, I think it was like a guideline essentially where I'm saying like, here's what I thought of, like, if you want to do this, cool. But if you have like your own idea for it, like, do you want to do instead? That's cool as well. But also like, I like to go detailed in my script. So like, have references, because I feel if you have a specific idea in your head and you don't mention it, then can't, and it's your own fault if like the artist hasn't included it because the artist isn't a mind reader. Like, so like, I was like, and in terms of like, artists may have many skills, but like, psychic powers aren't one of them that I'm aware of yet. But like, the
only in a Carrie kind of way, not the mind reading kind of way.
Anytime a writer says like the great thing about comics is unlimited budget, you can put anything you want on the page, like and you go, and then like the head explodes. But yeah, like in terms of references, yeah, like I like to kind of like especially like with the Nasty, which is set in my hometown of Rutherglen, just outside of Glasgow. I thought this is the first and probably only comic book that's ever going to be set in Rutherglen. Like no one like has been in like in comics has been in Rutherglen, so I'm going to just like spend a lot of time just like walking around Rutherglen and taking lots of like pictures that I can then send to the artist to be like like here like here's my hometown, here's all these little landmarks you can put in. And Adam had a blast like putting these random street corners that like but just seem like generic settings to like 99% of the readers that read this book. But then I went to Rutherglen Library and someone's like, "Oh, I saw you put like the Market Square in there." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I did." Yeah, it's the same with like when it came to Orla. There's some locations where I just like I think like there's like a weird shrimp bar in issue 2. I just gave like the title of the shrimp bar, and then Sally went like ham wild. Like
like, okay, so Cronenberg body horror shrimp. Ramen.
It's called Cronenberg Shrimp Co. And then like and then like so
trying these weird like body horror shrimp that sort of looked like fetuses. I was like, I don't know, it feels like Cronenberg.
But then like but then like other times it's like, let's say it's like sending locations. Like I think like when I was like in Seattle for Emerald City back in last year, like I spent some time just walking around some residential areas taking pictures of like apartment blocks and things to give a sense like what the housing is like like in like downtown Seattle, to kind of get an idea like for any location shots or anything, like if some case I wanted to have any ideas based off of that. So it's a bit of a mix of both, I think. It's like informing like the artist, but also like giving them like room to like be creative and like do their own thing. So it's like that kind of balance.
Yeah.
And I mean sometimes there's situations where like you say, oh, it's a a coffee shop, and it's like, well, I can kind of do whatever. Like, oh, it's going to be at Pike, at Pike Place. And it's like, well, that's a big area. I can pick like 5 different angles that I could do. Like, do I want to have the big like marketplace sign in the background and make it really obvious that they're there? Do I want to pick kind of like a area that's less photographed? Like, there's still choices that I have to make even when I'm given a specific.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's something that as a non-artist I would never even think of. It's like, well, yeah, you just draw the coffee shop. What do you mean? There's 7 different ways you could do it.
Like, well, is it like a little like little hippie one? Is it like the flagship roastery? Give me a vibe here. Is it pretentious? Can I get like am I getting a good scone or a bad scone here?
And what kind of scone are you getting? Are you getting just chocolate chip, or are you getting like
can I just get like a regular black coffee here, or is it gonna be complicated? Like
it's all those little details again that kind of bring it like to life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good stuff. So changing gears for a second, John, you also have Grolgor and Shanks running on Kickstarter right now.
Yes, I do. Grolgor and Shanks is a genre mashup of high fantasy and procedural crime. I've been saying the elevator pictures like Lord of the Rings meets Knives Out. It's about a kind of fancy dwarf tailor and his like sullen orc steward who travel around from like town to town and village to village in this mythical realm of Plana and search for business, and to keep on like accidentally getting involved in various like crimes and mysteries that they have to solve, like a pair of prototypical private detectives. And like it's very kind of like episodic. It's kind of anthology style almost, where each like chapter. It's its own standalone, self-contained mystery, very much in the mode of like, you know, I was going to say Colombo,
Columbo, Poker Face, Murder She
Colombo,
Wrote,
the Murder She Wrote, Poker Face, that type
Spencer
of
for
stuff.
Hire. I could keep going.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff like Magnum PI, you know, so it's like kind of like that with like a, you know, in a fantasy backdrop. And like, you know, like, so you have a kind of character drama stuff that runs through it all, but you can pick up any one and you can get its own story. So this one is on Kickstarter right now. It is a special Kickstarter deluxe edition, which contains the first 2 chapters and a nice Kickstarter exclusive volume. And the general roadmap is going to be, we're going to do this one now, which is already funded. And I think when I last looked, it just passed 200 backers. And then at the end of the year, we're going to do another one, collecting issues 3 and 4. And then early 2026, we're going to go to direct market and release it as a 4-issue miniseries. And then we're going to do the collection, but hopefully summer 2026. So that's the kind of roadmap for that. But yeah, check it out. Like Comics Tribe have made a handy little truncated, easy share link, which is comicstribe.com/GS. That's comics with an X. comicstribe.com/letter G, letter S for Grogor Shanks. If you do that, I'll get you to the Kickstarter page and you can check it out.
That's awesome. So, like, what's it like? I assume since you've already got the next year and a half plan for it, that it's already completely written.
Oh yeah, like I've written like this 4-issue series and the following 4-issue series of Grogor Shanks. I've got 8 issues in the can of this series, so I'm invested in making this happen.
That's awesome. I mean, like that as a reader, that gives me more confidence in like checking out anything that you were to put out like that, because it's not just like, well, they don't know where this is going and like they've already got plans laid out, so they must have a bigger story and like ideas, and that gives me plenty that I can then, you know, collect and read and enjoy. So that's great.
My take on it is like there's so many ways along the process that like, you know, a comic can get held up or delayed or like, you know, be like production can take longer than expected. So I don't want to gum up the works by having everyone waiting for me, like as I try and write a script. Like that's my nightmare scenario. I want to have like everything ready to go so as soon as, you know, the rest of the team's ready, like I'm ready.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Sally,
I feel like that's something that, like, you know, we were talking before about self-publishing versus working with a publisher, and like when you've self-published and you've done every step in the process, it makes you really aware of like everybody who comes after you. Yeah. When you're working with a publisher and you're like, oh, I gotta get my shit together. I gotta get everything done on time.
Yeah, you don't exist in a bubble. Like everyone else is dependent on you. I mean, I always go back to like I was in a panel at Glasgow Comic Con, and like the interviewer asked us, they were like, you know, how do you envision like the relationship between like a writer and an artist and like the creative team? And then this other artist that was on the panel was like, well, I like to think of it as like Twilight when a werewolf like, you know, bonds for life with like, you know, like, you know, a mate, and like they can form a connection that's very beautiful. So I kind of paused in a second and I said, well, for me it's like the human centipede.
Yeah, it's like when it's like the end of Friday the 13th when, you know, Jamie Lee Curtis has thought that she's killed Michael Myers, and then he sits back up.
Oh yeah,
it's like, surprise, you owe me another script.
That's awesome. Sally, what else do you have going on, or was this the one for you right now? And then you're
So Orla is the one comic that I'm working on right now.
Perfect.
I just have Orla. Oh, you know what? I have the I don't have the info in front of me, but the if you are a Barnes and Noble's member, you can do the pre-order event to get the, like, I think it's like 25% off the trade paperback of Archaic. So pick up the trade paperback.
Nice. Always I'm always happy to plug other stuff as well, because I know as a creative myself, like it's not just one thing that you have going on. There's always something cooking in some way, shape, or form.
The hustle never ends. It's like, you know, what after we finish like this little period of seeing like, you know, comic shops are like, you know, the be all and end all, like this is like, you know, the absolute central. we'll be back in 6 months and saying bookshops are really good, you know. We're trying to tell, you know.
And libraries.
Yeah, libraries.
Tell your local librarian
Yeah.
that you want the archaic trade paperback.
Yeah. But yeah, but in terms of Orla, tomorrow is the FOC for that, which is for anyone who doesn't know, FOC final order cutoff is the last date that people shops can pre-order stock to be guaranteed to get it on release day. You can theoretically still order books after FOC, but it's gone to print by that point, so there's no guarantee there'll be enough of the print stock, the print to get it. So if you definitely want your book, now's the time to order it. So if you're a reader, or if you're someone who's listening to this, I think that sounds interesting, don't just assume that your shop will get it in. More than now more than ever is how fractured the market's got. A lot of retailers are understandably cautious, and they're only going to order something in if they know that people want it. So when you go to your comic shop and you pre-order a series, not only does it mean that they will order the copies for you, but it indicates to that shop that there's interest in this book, and it may encourage them to order further copies for their shelves. So actually, it does a lot of good when you let shops know that you want to pre-order. It's actually super simple to do. All you need to do is go to your comic shop, or phone your comic shop, or email your comic shop, whatever, and tell them you want to pre-order Orla. You don't need to give the stuff order numbers and all that. That stuff for retailers. All you need to say is you want to order Orla. Maybe at a push say Orla from Mad Cave Studios, so they know where to look. But other than that, that's it. And then they'll add it to your pull list. If you don't have a pull list to your comic shop, again, not a big deal. One, if you decided that Orla is the book that made you want to start a pull list to your comic shop, thank you. But if you do, again, it's just a case of going to your comic shop and saying, I'd like to set up a pull list. Here's my name, and they'll give you a number, and then that's it. You've got a pull list. You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to pay a subscription fee. You don't have to pay to pre-order the book. It's just, you pay when it arrives. And I say, you do that small step, it makes a massive difference to creators. So if you're reading this, I'm reading this. If you're watching this video, either it be now or tomorrow or whatever, please take the time, if you're interested, to get in touch with your comic shop tomorrow, which is your last chance to do it, and let them know you would like Orla. At the end of the day, you'd have an eternal gratitude.
It's perfect. I love all of the pitches that you just gave. At a pull lists, go to your comic shop, talk to your comic shop owner. All of those things only ever benefit everybody involved. And I just read in one of the Discords I'm a part of that it's super easy as a creator to go to a library and be like, hey, I just had a book. It'd be awesome if you wanted to carry it. And you can work with your library as the creator or as a reader, because I've gone into my library and been like, hey, you don't have this book and I can't find it anywhere. Can you find a copy of this obscure graphic novel? And they're like, clickety click, clack, clack. Actually, we've got one in 2 states over. I can order it for you and we'll get it here and you can check it out. And they do that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, libraries are amazing. I don't know, as I said, I assume it's similar to the UK as it is in the US, but in my library here, in Scotland, when you get a library card, it doesn't just let you check out the books that are in the library. You see, you have access to their massive online catalog, which is essentially every book which is in the book database. And if you see you want this book, they can source that book and get it in for you to loan out. And again, the same idea. It'll then make them encourage them to maybe get more in for readers. And yeah, libraries are amazing. A friend of mine told me to again, I'm sure there's a US equivalent, but here in the UK, I set up with this that I became a member of this thing where I could sign in my details to the library database and the kind of view ISBNs of my books, and off of the back of that, every year I would get a check in for the money that comes from books being lended in the library, and surprisingly large amount, even though you're only getting a small fraction, it all builds up.
That's awesome. I didn't know about that. That's cool.
My mom gets very excited when she sees any of my stuff in the library. So
it's
another reason to support your library.
I'm so pleased when the Nasty ended up in Rutherglen Library, because Rutherglen Library was where on my street as a kid when I first got into reading, and then in Rutherglen's the setting of the Nasty, and then the comic or the comic is there and another go library now, which is just
That's
cool.
awesome. It's a full circle moment for sure.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, so it sounds like I'm winding down, but I'm not fully done with you yet. My notes are done. But...
Michael Myers sitting up one last time.
Yeah, this is me sitting up to say I have two more things that I want to do. The first, we're gonna pose. I'm gonna take a screenshot and I'm gonna use that as the YouTube thumbnail. It makes my life easier, and it can sometimes be really fun to see what we pose as. So we'll get keyboard shortcut here.
It's me having my Orla moment where I'm trying to find like a version of myself. I don't hear.
Oh yeah. See, we can coordinate things. I'll look dreamy eyed. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Cool. And then the other thing that I like doing, and I completely forgot to tell you before we came live, but hey, I'm going to put you both on the spot. I love this show and talking to creatives because everybody that I talk to has different experiences, different backgrounds, different walks of life, and yet different time zones. And yet we all end up in this medium of comic books. And so something I like to do every episode and end every episode with is anything that you want anybody to hear directly from you. It could be a sales pitch for Orla. It could be the top 5 books that you've checked out from your local library. The content doesn't matter specifically so much as I just want to make sure that the two of you have some space just to share any message that is, in your authentic voice from you for anybody that is watching or listening to this later. So we've been starting with Sally a lot, so I'll give her the pass. And John, you're going to go first this time. The floor is yours.
Done. I feel I've already thoroughly shilled for Orla at this point, so I think I'm going to make use it for continuing to do that. But also, you should buy Orla. But I don't know. I guess we've talked a lot about process and being creative and developing stories and all this stuff and the pitfalls and the risks of it all. But I think if I were to say anything, it would just be if you've got an idea, if you want to write a comic or you want to draw a comic, do it. I think we can talk ourselves out of so many things. Go, oh, what if it's this? What if it's that? What if it's hard? Maybe the comic will suck. I think it probably won't go better than you think it's going to be. But you'll learn so much from the process of just making something, and getting to the end of something as well, and writing the end at the end of it. Whether it be a script or a 4-page comic or whatever else we've talked about, you won't know until you've done it. Once you've made something, regardless of what the quality of it is, whether it's good or bad, you will instantly, by virtue of having made it, put yourself above 90% of the people who say, oh, I would like to do a comic or I have ideas for a story. So I would say if you ever thought about doing something, do it. Get the ball rolling. That's my little spiel, Doug.
I love it. Oh, Sally, to give you just another second, because I forgot earlier, anytime I have somebody on that's not in the States, we have a local international market. And so my wife always wants me to ask, what's your favorite local to you snack that I can try and find at our local market?
Oh, Glasgow's a wasteland of cuisine. All our good food is restaurants from other places. But I will say that's a good example. It's not necessarily Norwegian, but it's Scottish. I will stump for haggis. Everyone says oh, haggis, the heart, lungs, and liver of a sheep boiled in its own stomach. It's became a punchline for terrible food. One, that is bad PR. Sausages are just as bad. No one talks about sausages that way. Haggis is actually really nice. It's spicy and all that stuff. It's got good flavors. Give it a shot. Haggis and black pudding are surprisingly solid, good dishes. I've had a haggis and black pudding pizza, which was amazing. So I would say get over your prejudices and have some sheep guts.
Perfect. All right, Sally, you're up.
Anyway, I completely forgot what I was going to say. No, so I was actually going to say something very similar to what John said, not about the haggis, but about, making cool, weird stuff. Part of what makes me love comics so much is the community of like people who just want to make weird stuff. And also just the process of working collaboratively. Like, I love having the opportunity to work with new people. I like bringing back people that I've worked with in the past and getting opportunities to work with them again. But like the joy is in the process. The joy is in the collaboration, the thought process, the research, the day-to-day, like, I get to sit down and draw this. You know, we live in a world that is very focused on consumption, like quick, easy consumption, having things be the finished final product, and have like, you know, with like AI art, like you don't learn anything in the process. You don't get the joy of discovering something new while you're in the process of making something. Like when I first started working on Orla, I had a great time going back and looking at weird comics from the 60s and 70s and getting to see some fantastic art and learn about artists that I didn't know, like Liz Berube, or see all these like Spanish artists, or, you know, from Spain or from South America, who I was familiar with their names from them drawing horror comics, and then found out they had also drawn romance comics for UK publications. Finding all these weird text choices and fonts and designs for titles and splash pages and panel layouts. Like, there's so much joy in digging through what's come before us and finding what resonates with you and finding what inspires you. And when you collaborate, you get to share that with the people that you work with, and you get to come to them and be like, I found this cool thing. How can we riff on it? You know, or like, hey, this is my favorite movie. You should watch it. Having that shared experience, sharing ideas, sharing inspiration, the process of drawing and redrawing and trying to figure out how something works in space or how a room is laid out. All of those things make you a stronger, more interesting individual. And all the things you do outside of art too, whether it's like swimming or yoga or watching older movies or watching new movies or, you know, watching wrestling, like whatever, you know, having a world outside of just drawing too is really important. So that's my spiel. Make friends, make weird stuff with your friends, do stuff that's not geared towards just producing for other people. Make weird stuff for yourself, because what you make for yourself, there's going to be an audience.
Yeah, you know, he's gonna have an audience of one to start with, because you're gonna like it.
You're gonna like it. Maybe like one of your weird friends is gonna like it. Maybe your mom's gonna like it. Who knows?
Yeah,
that's awesome. Perfect. Well, both of those were yes. You're both welcome back anytime to share more of that. I love the DIY that is ingrained. And also, Sally, the fact that you started out making like photocopies at a Kinko's for like zines and stuff. I feel that in my bones, and I love it. So thank you both for hanging out. This was an excellent chat. Hang out after I end this. I got logistic stuff for you. But for everybody else, whether you watched it live, whether you're watching it on a replay or you're listening to it wherever, thanks for tuning in. Do the thing that better show hosts do than I do, and share it and like it and post it and subscribe to it. And obviously buy Orla. Yeah, do the thing. I've got the link conveniently enough for you to Mad Cave's page, so you can just pre-order directly from Mad Cave right now. What do you just go and click the thing? It's fine. So what's a good podcast without a good tagline? This one's mine. Go do what's good for you, punks, and read some indie comics, because we are out of here. See you next time.